Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Charles Sabanson, and welcome you guys to another episode of the Dreamers Pro Show. We cover everything from sports, hot topics, classic debates, entertainment, and we give you guys a fresh perspective on things and how we see them. And today we have a pretty interesting show in store for you guys. Before we get into it, please make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. Let's get into this topic here. So yesterday, we did a show just kind of giving some more of our thoughts on the breaking news that took place, I believe, 2 days prior, when we found out that Skip Bayless was no longer going to be at Undisputed after the summer, after 8 years with that network. He signed with them in 2016. And when he got there, he initially got a $25 million contract, and his debate partner at the time was Shannon Sharpe. And then he signed a new deal back in 2021 for about $32 million. But something interesting happened, which was last year after Shannon Sharpe left. The show started to see a sharp decline in viewership, and then basically now it was averaging around 50,000 viewers a day, which is horrendous. When there were some days, ESPN First Take was experiencing over 700,000 viewers, right, with the addition of Shannon Sharpe. And many of us out here were speculating that it was only a matter of time before the show was canceled, but instead, that's not what exactly happened. They didn't cancel the show, but instead, FS1 decided to move on from their investment and probably the face of that network in Skip Bayless. So various people out there were reacting to it. Marcellus Wiley did a show. We did a show. Various people reacted to it. But one of the people that we were waiting to hear from was Stephen A. Smith himself. In the live that we did when we discussed this topic initially, I spoke about the impact that Skip Bayless had on people like Stephen A. Smith and Shannon Sharpe by basically extending that olive branch, and then they took the opportunity and ran with it. And, you know, Stephen A. Smith then ultimately went on to become the face of ESPN after Skip Bayless left the network. So when it came time for Stephen A. Smith to react to it, I guess some people were thinking that he was going to kick Skip Bayless while he's down and all of that. But instead, Stephen A. Smith decided to take a very humble and gracious approach and basically spoke about the impact Skip Bayless had on the sports community in terms of sports media over his 4 decades of covering sports. So what we want to do now is want to play exactly what Stephen A. Smith had to say about Skip Bayless, and then we're going to come back and react to his comments. Take a listen to Stephen A. Smith here.
Skip Bayless and I have not spoken in a long time. He's on that side of the fence. I'm on this side of the fence. But as I've stated on many occasions, as I've stated months ago to Dan Le Batard, in response to Dan Le Batard and something that he had said in terms of me wanting to destroy Skip Bayless, he ultimately retracted that statement in fairness to him. I don't root against my colleagues and contemporaries, and certainly not my friends. I just root for me to be more successful. Being on First Take and wanting to be number one doesn't mean I wanted Skip Bayless to fail. Doesn't mean that I want to see him out of the business and out of the profession. And with the news coming down that he's departing from FS1, I have not called him. I'm not going to, because I know what this moment must be like for him. They can put out all the stories that they want to. Skip Bayless has a boatload of energy, and Skip Bayless doesn't want to walk away from anything. He lives, eats, and breathes sports. I don't know anything. I haven't called and asked anybody anything. What I know is that there is no way on earth that I can imagine him walking away. And I was watching some folks talk the other day, and including Marcellus Wiley, our former colleague at ESPN, and he had mixed emotions because obviously he likes Skip, but doesn't like Skip's trolling tendencies throughout the years. But Skip was always nice to him. He's fond of Skip, et cetera, et cetera. So he had mixed emotions. There were others who expressed the same thing. For me, it's sadness. Because I can't imagine that this is a happy time for him. There's a lot of positive things going on in my career and the place that I'm in. Skip Bayless has a lot to do with that. Who knows where I'd be had he not put me on First Take. Yes, we catapulted and we elevated and we became number one together, and that's true. But it doesn't happen if he doesn't push to make it happen. I'm not going to speak for Shannon Sharpe. He can do that on his own. But I will quote him and what he has said to me on numerous occasions. No matter what happened with him and Skip Bayless, he's not going to let 6 years be ruined by 6 months. Well, he's not going to let 6 months ruin what transpired between them over 6 years. It's real easy for folks to pounce on whatever their perception is of what happened with Skip and FS1. But what I would ask you to consider is the industry itself outside of sports. Think about what has transpired in this world. Think about how every team, every entity, every company, whatever it is that you want to pick and choose or whatever, the spin doctors, the PR departments and everything else, no matter what you say, there's always plausible deniability. We've diminished ourselves as a society to a point where you can have the facts right in front of you, and all that matters is the spin attached to those facts, depending on which side of the aisle you fall on any particular subject. So what has ultimately born from all of that is debate. It's different perspectives and different opinions coming out. And a lot of times what I think people miss when they're talking about this industry, they're talking about a Skip Bayless or me or somebody else and trolling and using words like that. Well, number one, you're forgetting history. You're forgetting that Skip Bayless was a columnist in LA and Dallas and Chicago and various other places, that he had a journalism career spanning decades. You're forgetting that although he would take the positions that he take, and yes, he was a bit excessive with Tim Tebow, and clearly excessive with LeBron James, and clearly excessive with various other things. You're forgetting what that bred. You're forgetting the fact that it opened the floodgates for others to debate him.
So you heard what Stephen A. Smith had to say. What are my thoughts? I thought that what Stephen A. Smith said was gracious, but it was actually factually correct. I think he gave the proper respect and credit to Skip Bayless. Regardless of whatever we think about Skip, we can't take away what he did for sports media. We can't. Now, he did have some negative effects, and other people have pointed this out, but as it pertains to people like Stephen A. Smith and Shannon Sharpe, he did play a role. And I'm glad that Stephen A. Smith publicly acknowledged that, right? Because some people, you do things for them and they get to a certain position and they forget all of the people that helped them get to where they were, where they are. And then they forget them, right? And it builds resentment in the people behind them. Now, what's interesting is he took a totally different tone than he did when Max Kellerman left ESPN, because Max Kellerman, you were just basically trashing him every opportunity he got. And I think this audio basically shows you how much respect Stephen A. Smith has for Skip Bayless, right, for what he did. And the fact that he said he never forgot what Skip did for him, I think that was a classy thing to say. You guys know I'm not a fan of Stephen A. Smith at all, but I have to call it like I see it. I think his comments were appropriate. I think they were appropriate. I thought they were classy, and I think it was the right thing to say given the circumstance. And he would look pretty bad if he was now to try to dance on Skip Bayless after kick him while he's down. After, when Stephen A. Smith was in a down position, Skip Bayless was the one that helped him up. So that would reflect poorly on Stephen A. Smith's character as a person if he did that. And I think people wanted him to do that. That was not the right thing to want him to do, because I think ultimately it would make him look like a very, very bad person. Like, you don't kick the person that helped give you the opportunity, regardless of what you think. The person helped you, right? So that's why I stand on it. I think what he said was correct, and I agree with everything he said. So what I want to know from you guys, what do you think about what Stephen A. Smith had to say? And ultimately, how do you think Skip Bayless is, ultimately lands? Do you think he goes off and does something else, or do you think he fades off into the sunset? Do you think he goes back to ESPN First Take? Whatever you guys think. Please leave your thoughts and comments in the comment section, and we catch you guys on the next show. Peace.